Welcome to Better Together podcast, produced and directed by Our Hospice of South Central Indiana, a not-for-profit dedicated to making every moment count. We will share true stories about hospice, palliative, and personal care services that we provide in 22 counties all over South Central Indiana. I'm your host and president, Steph Kane. Happy New Year, folks. We are going to listen to the best of 2025, the past 17 episodes Cliff Notes version. So enjoy. Remember, the best is yet to come. So today we have a special guest, our medical director, Dr. Lee Anderson. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about, one of the biggest misconceptions I think around hospice is, when they hear the word, the H word, the hospice word, they think it's about giving up. It's about giving up hope. Mm-hmm. And so can you just address that? What are some of the other ways to think about hospice and really what it is?
Yeah, so I do hear that, quite a bit. Well, I don't want to give up. And to me, that's a trigger for me to kind of dig a little bit deeper. I always like to ask, what are you hoping for? What are you worried about? So when someone says giving up, I say, well, what worries you, about stopping treatment or, changing over to hospice? And it honestly can really vary from person to person. Sometimes it's, well, I worry I'm going to be in pain. My doctor's giving me, XYZ and I don't want to be in pain. And then that kind of pivots the conversation to we can talk about, well, how can hospice help you, with your pain? We're great at that. We have access to medicines maybe your primary care doctor doesn't have access to, those kinds of things. Sometimes it's, well, what are you hoping for? Well, I'm hoping to live as long as I can. People are worried that their time on earth is going to be cut shorter, if they go on hospice. Mm-hmm. And that actually opens the door to talk about how, well, actually, hospice helps patients so much just with symptoms and quality of life that patients really tend to live longer once they enroll in hospice.
Yeah, I think our average length of stay is at 92 days right now. Mm-hmm. So... Mm-hmm. That's just average, and many of our patients live much longer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, a typical example, one I see all the time, even I had a patient this week, but heart failure patients fill up with fluid, their legs get puffy, they get short of breath because there's fluid in their lungs, and they're going to the hospital once a month, to try to get this fluid off. Well, when a nurse, comes in a couple of times a week and is in close communication with a physician and medications get adjusted, diuretics get adjusted, they feel better than ever. They are having no trouble breathing. We had a patient this week who was stuck in his room because his legs were so swollen and painful. And now, by the end of this week, he's going to the dining room 3 times a day, for meals, and is really happy that he's more mobile. So like patients like that, it's once they get the right level of care, the care that they need, they do so much better.
One of the things that our team is doing a really good job every single day when we talk about our mission to make every moment count is they ask the patients, what matters most to you today? And if it's about, I want to go to the dining room and see my friends. Mm-hmm. Maybe they live in, an extended care facility or an independent living sometimes, and hospice comes in and, has another layer of support. Mm-hmm. There's an example right there. Yeah. What about for the caregiver, the family members, about the giving up, sort of debunking a myth, if we elect hospice, are we as a family giving up on them? Sometimes, the patient will have their own, concerns, but they're ready often. And I'll see caregivers that feel guilty, if they enlist hospice. Mm-hmm. And what are some of the things you see or conversations you have?
Yeah. So, so often with families, especially because so many disease processes take so much time, that this role of caregiving or I've got to do X, Y, and Z, I got to bring him to these appointments, it almost gets baked into an identity. Mm-hmm. And it's a hard transition for families to kind of pivot away from that too. A lot of times I try to reframe, instead of like, well, I don't want to give up on dad, or, I just kind of turn the conversation a little bit to, like dad's got dementia, for example, well, hey, if, your dad could talk to us right now, if he could really tell us, what would he think about all of this? Or I might go back a step further, like, tell me about your dad. And a lot of times I hear, well, dad is fiercely independent. Dad loves doing, working on the farm. Dad, this. And so then once we've kind of talked about dad and I get a sense of who dad is, then I can kind of ask the next question of, well, if he were able to talk to us, what are dad's thoughts about going to the hospital, again and again, or, would dad rather do that, or would, and it almost makes it easier for families to see things from their loved one's perspective.
If we were to talk about maybe a takeaway that we could give, what would you tell them or encourage them to do?
So I guess uh, I'll tell them. So my takeaway would be, death is scary. And so therefore thinking about hospice, which is so closely affiliated with death, is also a scary thing. And hospice is a beautiful thing. And so if you've got someone that you are thinking about, maybe hospice is bouncing around in your mind, know that it is a gift that you would be giving to them. And if you're a patient, it's a gift for your family.
Today I have with me Donna Butler, and Donna is a nurse practitioner in our palliative care clinic. Welcome, Donna.
Thank you for having me.
Could you share a story about a patient, having palliative care alongside their curative care and the benefits of it, what that looks like for them?
So I, early on in my career as a nurse practitioner, I had this wonderful patient that he really brought home palliative care to me. He was about 75 years old. He was a professional, or had been a professional, and had been diagnosed with prostate cancer that had spread to his bone. And he and his wife, he was 75, they were still out and about doing things. And so he was very involved in the community. They were traveling still. And boy, oh boy, he hit this brick wall with this cancer diagnosis, because it not only, affected him physically because of the bone pain and things he was experiencing. It changed his life as far as being able to be active and just even thinking about what does my life look like now?
Right.
So it really affected his relationship with his wife too. And so he came to our clinic and he was in a wheelchair because his pain was so bad. So we got to work really quickly on getting his pain under control. He also was having a lot of problems with sleep problems and anxiety and depression. So we worked really closely with him on adjusting medications. We had a social worker and a therapist that worked with him, just helping him, guiding him as far as counseling and working on coping skills and just how to deal with all of these new things that were going on in his life. The other big thing he had was hot flashes. With the cancer treatment, it caused him severe hot flashes. And so trying to get those symptoms under control with some medications. And, the oncologist started their treatments, for his cancer and things. And our social worker was working with him. Our chaplain met with him and his wife many times and helped them from a spiritual standpoint. Once he started getting his treatments and the medicines were helping with symptom control and things, he was starting to get his life back. And one day we got a letter in the mail from him. And he was just so appreciative and so pleased with how he had gotten his life back. And we followed him for a number of years, and he ended up having a progression of his disease, several years later, and ended up transitioning to hospice care. And but we followed him for a long time with managing his symptoms and working with him. So it was a great experience just seeing what a difference palliative care can make.
Today I have with me Julie Davis. Hi, Julie.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you.
She is the program director for our personal care services. Well, can you tell us what personal care is and really the kind of help that it provides?
So personal care offers support to help you stay independent. So anyone wanting to continue to stay at home, and they might not be able to do some things they used to be able to do, and that's where we can come in and help. We are non-medical, but we help with what we call ADLs, activities of daily living. So those things could include helping with bathing and grooming. We can help with light housekeeping, light cooking. We do a lot of laundry. We can do medication reminders. We can actually take the clients out to appointments or social activities. We can drive them. And also we do companionship, and that seems to be a big one with our clients.
Yeah. Tell us a story, another family story that really, hits home. for
Okay.
folks may connect
Yeah.
with.
So we had a family that contacted us, and they were looking for some options. They had a family member they were considering putting in a healthcare facility. They didn't think it was time yet, so they were looking at options. So we met here at the hospice center and talked to the family members, and we felt very confident after talking to that family that we could come in and help this family member stay independent, to remain independent. So we matched him with one of our personal caretakers. His name is Pierce. He has done an outstanding job for us. But it's been just an absolutely perfect match. The family they have seen changes in their dad, very positive changes. And again, it has allowed him to remain independent, but it has given the family peace of mind. So the family actually provided me a quote. My dad has received fabulous care from his personal care assistant. We were facing the difficult possibility of moving him into a healthcare facility, but we didn't feel he was quite ready for that step. In exploring other options, we found our personal care, and we're so grateful we did. The PCA ensures Dad gets to and from the dining room, takes daily walks with him, and keeps him company. Since starting care, Dad's morale has lifted noticeably, and we believe it's even helped his memory. Most importantly, the PCA has given us peace of mind knowing Dad is well cared for even when we can't be there every day.
Today I have with me Chaplain Mark Phillips. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you.
So glad to have you today.
It's great to be here.
So, Mark, how do you explain the role of the chaplain on the hospice team?
Well, we exist to take care of the spiritual needs. A lot of times we don't think about our mortality until we must. And there's times when we get into a point to where we don't know why we're feeling the way we're feeling. And sometimes it's just a matter of having somebody to talk to, somebody to sit down with and just hear your concerns. A lot of times we might think that, we're just not good enough, or we're not doing things the way we should, and those sorts of things. And my role is just to kind of come alongside of those who are feeling and just help them express those, as well as just to be that ear. I tell people all the time, I've got big ears and we might as well use them. And so just being there to listen. And I think that that's a very important part of being a chaplain. But our lives, our bodies, our being, our existence is three things. It's not just physical, but it's also emotional and spiritual. And when one is lacking, the others suffer.
One of the most beautiful things about hospice, taking care of the whole person and their extended family and loved ones. So that whole unit together, we provide services. So, while we respect all faith traditions, I'm sure you have your own faith tradition. How do you meet people right where they are and be a support for them?
I think the most important thing we can do is listen. Ask the question, what do you believe? What do you think's going to happen when your loved one's not here anymore? Or as the loved one, as the patient, where do you think you're going to go? What do you believe is going to happen when you take your last breath here on earth? And just being able to speak into that and listening to what they have to say and what their belief system is, so that you're not trying to impose your own on them, but also giving them the space to share and be open to hearing what other people believe as well.
We have a practice called Vital Talk that Dr. Anderson trained us on in another podcast, and they use the term hopes and worries. What are your hopes? What are your worries?
Yeah.
And talking through that and meeting people where they are. Yeah, really important stuff. And I know that, there's uncertainty for sure. And how do you navigate those conversations about faith and doubt and end of life?
Well, one of the things you're taught in seminary is the different belief structures and what people may believe in different denominations. And having that background and having that information in our own minds is helpful when it comes to understanding why people believe what they believe. And so, again, it's just a matter of listening to what they believe and being able to speak into that in a way that's meaningful for them. Even if you don't always agree, it doesn't matter. It's really... nobody knows what tomorrow is going to bring. Nobody knows what eternity looks like because we haven't been there yet.
sometimes we're talking to the patient, right? Sometimes you're going in as a support and the chaplain support for a patient, and sometimes it's for their loved one.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, how do you ever experience where maybe a caregiver's faith tradition might impact, their loved one that's being, yeah.
Yes, very much so. There's a couple of patients that we have on service that I don't provide care for them directly, but for their loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a lot of conversation around, what's heaven look like? What does life look like without your loved one? And how do we navigate those types of things? And just being that person to give them that space to share what's on their heart, what's on their mind, and just to bring hope to them and the understanding of, how they're feeling when it comes to their grief, because they're already starting to have the grief before their loved one's even gone.
Yeah. Can you share a couple of stories or a story, just one, about how you've supported one of our patients or their loved ones?
I have served a patient in the past, and he was a Navy veteran, and I'm also an Army veteran. So we kind of connected there. And in our conversations, we didn't really share a whole lot about Jesus or God and his spiritual background as much as just his military service and the camaraderie that comes along with. And he shared a whole bunch of stories with me. And one day his son was there while I was visiting, and I got to hear a lot of stories he'd never heard before. And his dad wasn't really all that verbal. He didn't really talk a whole lot to the family. And so having him experience that was just wonderful.
What a gift.
He thanked me not just for being a friend and a pastor and a chaplain to his father, but just for being able to experience those stories that he otherwise probably wouldn't have ever heard.
Joining us today is retired Air Force General Mark Piller, who retired from the U.S. Air Force after 37 years of distinguished service to his country. So walk us through what a typical day would look like as a We Honor Veterans volunteer.
Well, normally a day or two, or maybe a week before, I'll get a phone call saying, or an email saying, we have a pinning on such and such a day. Would you be available? And 9 out of 10 times I am available. So I put my uniform on, and we normally meet here, and then go to the place where the pinning's going to be. But sometimes we just meet where the pinning's going to be. When we get there, normally family is there. This is all coordinated with the family. It's a nice ceremony, but the family has to agree to do it, and the veteran has to agree to do it. And there are reasons that they don't want to do it, and we understand that, and we respect that. But when we get to do it, it's special. So we go in, meet the family, meet the veteran, and get to know the veteran. I ask questions, where were you based? What did you do? How long were you there? How long were you in the military? What were your jobs? Any stories that you want to share? I mean, we just sort of dig in. And, and then, so are you from here, or did you move back here, or how'd you end up in Columbus or Shelbyville or North Vernon or wherever we are? And so we talk to the veteran and get to know them. And then we do the ceremony. We have a poem that we read. We explain, I explain about the plaque and how special it is, because it's made by our C4 students here.
High school?
High school.
Okay.
When we started, we were just getting the plaques from Walmart.
Right.
And we decided to get more specific about it and made it special so that the C4 kids were making it. And it says the C4 is on the back of the plaque.
And they know that these are going to our veterans that served.
Yes.
Yeah.
Someone goes there every year and says, you're not just making ordinary plaques. These are going to veterans that are probably on the downside of their life toward the tail end, and these are going to be very meaningful. And then I read about the pin and its significance. So we give them the plaque, then I read about the pin, and then I put the pin on them, and then give them a hand salute.
Well, you and I did one of these together just recently for a community member that served, our country, our community, his family, and personally, Bob Haddad Sr. And I know that you knew him personally, and so sometimes you know the veterans from, raising kids together, being in the community, serving together. And that really impacted me and our hospice team as well. I think the family gets to see and hear stories that they didn't know anything about, right? And veterans will talk to other veterans about things and learn things about one another.
Exactly. And probably 70% of the time, we'll hang around with the families afterwards. We'll take pictures. We'll take pictures with the family. We'll take pictures with just me and the veteran, and there's lots of pictures. But then the discussion. And I've been lots of places where the families will come up to me and go, I've never heard Dad talk about any of that. And that's understandable, because a lot of these things, well, for instance, I was with a Marine from World War II, and he participated in Iwo Jima and Guadalcanal. And I looked at him in awe and said, I mean, you must be a cat with 9 lives to survive those two ferocious, historic battles and be here today at 89 years old. It's just a miracle.
Yeah. And, the way I notice the veterans straighten up and light up, their spirit just lights up when they see another fellow service.
Yeah,
no matter what.
And we're in uniform, and and it's guy's got a chest full of ribbons.
That's right.
And a haircut, and and still fits in the uniform. So it's. But they just impress the heck out of me with their spirit. A lot of them, say, "Oh, well, I was just a truck driver. I was just this. I was just that." I said, "No." I said, "We all served. Whether you served for 2 years or 20 years, we all served. We're all veterans, and you deserve this. You've earned this honor, and we are happy and proud to be here to honor you today."
I am with Sarah Stevens today. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you for being our guest. Sarah is manager of our support services here at Our Hospice, and we're going to discuss the importance of advanced care planning and the role of hospice in honoring end-of-life wishes. So, Sarah, these days we're asking our patients questions. We're asking what matters most to you today. And why is it important to talk about the now and then end-of-life wishes before a crisis happens? Can we address those two things?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that's very important. So kind of in crisis moments, we can imagine what a crisis would look like, right? Our emotions are high. Exhaustion is real. And we might not be able to think clearly about what we're wanting, right? And so having these conversations early when we're calm, when we're able to kind of clearly define what we want is so important. And it also really allows patients to have this control over what they want their care to look like. What is important to them? Do they want to focus more on quality and comfort? Is it important that they do something for the last time? I want to pass at home. What is important to that patient? So they're really able to have control over the situation. And end of life, we think we have all of this time, but most of the time it sneaks up on us, right?
I had a patient ask when I said, what matters most to you today? And he said, I just want to go outside.
Yeah.
So we have short-term and long-term. He was thinking, I said today. And so sometimes folks go from building to building to building, right? And they're in our hospice center and they have a patio and they can go outside and hear the birds and feel the wind. And those things matter.
Absolutely.
And in the long-term advanced care planning, what would you like to happen, either in the moments before you pass or after you pass, or what would you like that to look like? So tell us a little bit about these conversations that are so difficult for families to start. Why do you think they're so difficult?
I think it's because patients and families don't want to think about it, right? They want to keep pushing it down and down. And if I don't talk about it, it won't happen. But we know that we can't control that completely, right? And so oftentimes patients too might feel like if I do express this, I'm giving up and I'm not ready to give up, and trying to have that mind shift of, you're not giving up. You're just, you're shifting your hope to something different. And so, I think it's difficult for patients and families to just kind of start that conversation. Once they do start the conversation though, patients and families both say, I'm really happy that we talked about this. I'm really happy that we broached this topic. So these conversations can be difficult, but are so, so important.
What is the difference between families who approach these conversations with openness versus families that, like you said, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to bring that up.
I think just you see increased peace, right? You see that they have decreased stress. They're not worried about what mom or dad would want. They know what mom and dad would want because they were able to express that to them. So you just see, you're really able to focus on sharing memories with one another, spending time together instead of having to focus on the really hard conversations. You've already done it. So you feel peace.
Yeah. Can you share a story with us about an advanced care planning experience for the family? All right.
Sure. One of our social workers actually shared this story with me. Her grandmother was on service, and it kind of came very, very, very quickly. And so they really did not have these advanced care conversations. And grandma passed, and they went through her service. And at the end of the service, they realized, oh no, Grandma was a devout Catholic and we didn't do a rosary. Like, that was so important to her. How did we miss that, right?
Okay.
So they learned from that experience. And then another family member came on service and they're like, hey, we know what we're going to do right now. We're going to have these conversations. We're going to get everything lined up. So that way, number one, we don't miss anything that would matter most to this person. So they were able to do that. And then when that person passed, they were able to kind of focus on their grief and not having all of these check boxes over their head.
Respecting that faith tradition.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you say to someone who really doesn't know where to start?
I would say the first step would be to really talk to your healthcare team, really try to understand yourself, kind of what your care will look like, or what your disease is going to look like. First, understanding what that looks like. And then really asking yourself, what do I want my end-of-life care to look like? Is it important that I pass at home? Do I not want to pass at home? What do I want my care to look like? So once you kind of can think in your head what you would want, I would just encourage to have a conversation with the people that are closest to you, right? That that will help you honor those wishes. It's a difficult conversation to start, but just making sure that you have a calm location, enough time to really just kind of slowly, kindly, and gently discuss those wishes.
Today, our guest is Dennis Fogel. Welcome, Dennis.
Thank you.
Yeah. Dennis is our hospice board member and recently a volunteer as well.
Correct.
Yeah. So, Dennis, tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I am a Decatur County native, and I spent a lot of time in the manufacturing world, a little over 30 years. And then ended my career at Decatur County Memorial Hospital, where I started out in HR, ended up doing physician recruiting, community relations, and things like that.
Wonderful.
So,
yeah. Now, we've served community members. We've had patients and family members in Decatur County for, almost 40 years. And we have an office there.
Yes, we do.
So we take care of about 60 to 70 patients every day. So, in that area.
It's great having Our Hospice in Decatur County.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you for your service there. All right. So, Dennis, today I would like to talk about volunteerism. I know you're recently a volunteer. You're a volunteer board member, but also you volunteer with our patients and families most recently. So, what inspired you to begin volunteering that way and working directly with patients?
You in life you hear about, people going through, tough times. And I know in the past I have seen what our hospice has done for family and friends. And so I actually got to have the opportunity with my dad and with my brother-in-law to see hospice from the beginning to the end. And at that point, I just knew that I needed to be a part of that. And I wanted to serve not just the community, but to serve friends and family. And like you say, make those last moments count. And it's been a wonderful experience.
So we're so grateful for you. Yeah, I would say, can you walk us through a typical volunteer visit? What that looks
Oh
like.
yeah, yeah. Um, I'll talk about one of my I call them my hospice friends.
Okay.
That's what they are. They're
That's
my
right.
hospice friends.
Mhm.
And I have one lady that I see, and she is just charming. She has good wit about her,
Okay.
and so she just needs a friend.
Yeah.
And so I go in about once a week,
Okay.
spend 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it takes. We just sit and chat and laugh, and people come by the door going, "What are you people laughing at?"
Swap stories.
But yeah, we talk about family, we talk about the weather, we talk about life, and sometimes I just read.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful experience to be able to just sit with someone and just give them your time.
Yes.
That is so important.
What impact? And it makes
Yeah.
you sometimes get more than
Oh,
you
I do.
give, for sure.
I do. When I leave, you're walking on a cloud. It's just fun. Sometimes those times are tough though. Sometimes you go in and, there may be some illness or some things that aren't so good. So, sometimes it's just quiet time,
Mhm.
just sit there and just share and just be there. Because sometimes even in those times, knowing someone is there with you means a lot. Means a
Holding
lot.
space together.
Yeah.
Now, I heard you say leave the door open or folks may walk by.
Uh-huh.
Do you go to homes or do you go to facilities as well?
Where I'm
Wherever they
going
call
right,
them?
yeah, where I'm going right now, they're in nursing homes,
Okay.
and so they each have their room, and couple of right now I'm seeing 4 friends,
Wow.
and I look forward to it every week. And so when I'm there, I usually, because I know a lot of the people that are there at the nursing home.
Yes.
So as they come by, they'll come in and see us too and
Okay.
talk. So it's been great. It's a wonderful experience.
It sounds like you build community in a facility like that, right?
Yeah.
They see you come, it's a familiar face,
Right.
and everybody loves community. So
And
maybe not everybody, but yeah.
yeah, but it's important. I think that they not only have their own little community inside that building,
Yeah.
but sometimes when we come in from the community,
Mhm.
it kind of makes them feel extra special.
So
It
good.
makes them feel special.
Now, I'm sure you have many stories. Can you share a patient's story? Maybe something inspired you or something fun?
It was funny. One of my clients, we decided we were going to read this book, and it was a small, simple book, and it was about the nativity.
Nice.
And it had a lot of things about the stories of the Bible and things like that,
Mhm.
and I thought, I mean, this lady's 94 years old, so
Yeah.
I thought, I said, would you like to read? And so I take the book in and we read a little bit, and it was really interesting because, here I'm reading, trying to be, the good giver of time and talent, and when we're finished, she starts asking me questions about the Bible and the books and things like that. Or did
Okay.
you knew this? And I go, oh, okay. Well, I wasn't quite expecting that,
Yeah.
So she puts me on my toes a little bit.
So wonderful.
But oh my gosh, we sat there and laughed. It
Have a
was
great
just
time.
wonderful. It was wonderful.
And you don't have to have all the answers. You
No,
can phone a friend.
no. Yeah.
You can tap.
I told her, I said, wow,
you know your Bible, don't you? She says, well, don't you?
Yeah.
And you're going, oh, schooled by the 94-year-old.
Isn't that awesome? Mentoring each other.
Oh,
is
it's
what
great.
happens.
It's a true relationship.
So
That's what's so important.
Today, I am joined by two longtime board members who were both closely connected to the early days of our hospice center. Dr. Dave Thompson has provided decades of clinical leadership in our community and has supported our hospice through many key moments throughout the years. Tom Dowd, president, owner, co-owner of Dunlap and Company, played an important role in the original capital campaign that brought the hospice center back to life in 2003. So welcome, Tom and Dave.
Thanks,
Steph.
Good to be here.
Glad to have you. So, we are launching a $2 million capital campaign of the hospice center. We are honoring the past and building the future. Dave and Tom, here's what's keeping me up at night. Our building is tired. The walls have held so much love and so many final conversations, so many peaceful passings, and now they need our help. And so this is more than just cosmetics. We hope to modernize our patient rooms in the latest comfort and technology, infection control, and accessibility to family spaces that really feel like home. Now, we'll be honoring our legacy donors, the folks that really gave the first dollars to build the building. And there's going to be a new legacy wall and then naming opportunities for our refresh campaign that will take us well into the future. What do you think about when you think of, this opportunity comes around once every maybe quarter of a century?
Yeah, and I love how that our hospice has reached out to the original donors and said, "Hey, here's an opportunity to help us refresh and redo the inpatient facilities." And I think that just speaks to the legacy of our hospice and the donors, and I think people will jump at the chance to be able to give back to hospice again and refresh the inpatient facility.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, Tom.
I agree. That's, it's the Columbus way. And in so many ways, when there's a need, people find a way to step up and help and contribute and support. There's so many wonderful causes in town, but this truly is one of the most special causes. And we're honored and privileged to have this facility. And I'm excited about the future and taking care of patients and families and making every moment count for a lot of years to come.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it honestly starts at the board level. The board members to a person have all committed to the refresh campaign. Tom and Steph have both stepped up with donations to start the first inpatient refresh for the rooms, and that'll act as a model so we can bring future potential donors through the facility and show them what great work and how beautiful it's going to be, and bringing the outside in to the inside.
We are lucky to be joined by a local celebrity, Hutch Shoemaker. Hutch is third-generation owner of the Coca-Cola Bottling Company of Columbus, a family-owned business that served our community more than a century. And I wonder, you were one of our earliest volunteers and board members. So how did you get roped into doing this?
Well, it's kind of an interesting, funny, and sad story at the same time. My mother was diagnosed with ovarian cancer years ago, and she passed away in 1975. And so over a period of a couple of years, our family went through a very difficult time, and with her eventual death. And
did you take care of her in the home? Was she at home the whole time?
Yeah,
Oh,
she
that's
was.
awesome.
And so it was, and we had, back in that day, physicians were close family friends, and they would stop by. So we had support that a lot of people wouldn't have had,
Right.
in that situation. And so, we were being advised and sort of being counseled. But after her death, it must have been, if hospice was started in 1980, it must have been, I was in the second volunteer class.
Okay.
And we had, I think, 12, 14 patients at the time. They sent out a flyer, and I'd never heard of hospice. I'd never heard of the concept. I didn't know what it meant.
Right.
And they sent out a little trifold kind of flyer explaining the new hospice program in Columbus and what it was, and asking for some money. So I made this giant financial contribution of $100.
Nice. Yes, it was.
I sent in $100 check, and it said, "Would you be interested in becoming a volunteer?" And I put a question mark over that box.
Okay.
And so shortly thereafter, because of this giant check that I'd written, I got a call, and they said, "Yeah, we appreciate getting your check and everything, but there was a question mark around this volunteer box." And I said, "Yeah, what does it mean to be a volunteer?" And so the woman that was in charge at the time, and she called me and said, "Would you be interested in learning some more about what that means, being a volunteer?" And I said, yeah, I'd really kind of, and so she said, "Well, could we meet for a cup of coffee?" I said, "How about meeting for a beer?" So
Okay, that works.
we sat at the bar, at 4th Street Bar, and had a beer, and she...
A lot of good things start there.
Oh, absolutely. So I said, "What does this mean?" And she, and I explained to her the situation with my mother,
Right.
and what we had gone through. And I thought, boy, from reading about the program, I thought, boy, if we'd have had hospice when my mother was going through this, it would have been so incredibly helpful to our family.
Yes.
And my mother, because just not knowing what we were facing and how to deal with situations and everything that goes with that. And she said, "Well, a volunteer does this." And I said, "Boy, can you get a trial run? I mean,
Yeah.
because I don't know if I can."
I know what to do.
Well, and I don't know how I would react emotionally. I mean, dealing with death with people I don't even know, and end of life situations. So I said, she said, "Well, it doesn't really kind of work that way." And I said, "Well, boy," she said, "Now, this is not indentured servitude. You can quit. We can't keep you from doing that, but you have to go through this training." And so I said, "Well, yeah, I think I'd be interested." So I signed up to go through volunteer training and did that, and met some really incredible people and staff and nurses. And,
Did you have a buddy, a volunteer buddy?
at the time, I didn't know her, but
Okay.
she had signed up sort of the same way I did. And so then we became kind of a team.
Okay.
Her name was Martha Risk, and she is since deceased just in the last few years. But we were sort of, if it's appropriate to have Comedy Central involved with hospice, that was sort of Martha and I were the team that were so clueless about everything that was technically going on. We had to make light of our situation because it was the only way we could deal with it emotionally. So I received it. I don't know when it was, but I received a 20-year volunteer award at some point in the past. But so this all started in it must have been 1981 or 2 or something, since I was the second volunteer class. And like I said, met a lot of incredible people. And
visiting patients wherever they were in their homes, right?
At that point in time, you went to patient homes. And so the nurses did, sort of intake interviews with families that looked for what might be appropriate with the volunteer base we had and assign you patients. And so you met with the nurse in the home with the patient family as a volunteer and said, okay, what can we do to help? And back then, simply because I'm sure of governmental regulation, it was very hands-on.
It was. Yeah,
very
hands-on.
Very hands-on. And I hear that's not necessarily the case today. And volunteers today are very fortunate that it's not hands-on. But we encountered lots of unbelievable situations, and you might have a patient and a patient family for 2 weeks. You might have them for a year. And
you developed some relationships, lasting memories.
Absolutely. And some of the families are still in the community, and I interact with them.
That's right.
And these might be the children and or grandchildren of some of the patients we had not long ago. And it was always interesting in different ways. I mean, we've had situations where we went into patients' homes and they had no support whatsoever. We
Dogs.
oh cats, chickens, pigs, peacocks, and cows running around.
South Central Indiana. That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Never knew what you were going to run into.
Martha, I remember one time we had a patient and a woman delivered eggs. They lived, it was a farm family and they raised chickens and she sold eggs to supplement family income. And her husband was the patient and she would have to go on her egg route. And she said to Martha one time, she said, well, yeah, and she said, we have to get these chickens. We've got some chickens we have to dress and everything. And Martha thought she was talking about making little clothes for chickens and dressing
them. Like putting an outfit on, like we do with dogs.
And Martha started talking about helping dress these chickens.
Okay.
This woman looked at her like, "Oh, are you sure you want to do that?" Because
she wants to put an outfit on a chicken.
Typically butchering chickens didn't seem like that was what Martha's, and that's how you dress a chicken.
Wow, gets it ready.
You cut their heads off, pluck them, and dress them.
So did Martha do any of that?
No. Martha figured out that probably wasn't for her.
That's right.
We had some very interesting times. Wow. You never knew what you were going to encounter.
Well, today we get to welcome Sherry Stark with us. Hi, Sherry. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning. Sherry Stark has dedicated her career to public service and community development in Columbus, Indiana, including 12 years as president and CEO of Heritage Fund, the Community Foundation of Bartholomew County, a former deputy mayor and longtime advocate for the arts. She's also served as a trustee of Columbus Regional Health, where she was first introduced to the importance of palliative care. In memory of her parents, Kirby and Caroline Risk, Sherry made a transformational gift to establish the James Kirby Risk Jr. and Caroline Robinson Risk Fund for palliative support at Our Hospice. How is it that you got involved serving in the ways that you did throughout Columbus in your career?
Well, Steph, my first husband was a Navy pilot, and we moved 13 times in our first 10 years of marriage.
Oh, okay.
And so when we moved to Columbus, Indiana, I said, I want to put in roots. I want to belong. I want to live in a town where people know me and where they know my children. I think raising boys, you want to have a lot of support to keep them on the straight and narrow. And so I wanted to put roots in and be known.
Yeah.
And when I'd walk down the street, the idea that somebody would say, hey, hi, Sherry, felt wonderful. That's what I wanted to have happen. So I got involved.
You sure did. And you're still involved. What would you say to someone who wants to serve or give back, but they just don't know where to start?
I think there would be two different paths. If for a person who really feels like he or she hasn't done that before, think about what you enjoy doing, what feels comfortable to you, and find ways that you can do that make something a little better. Maybe a place, maybe a club, maybe a neighbor, maybe a child. Or if you think you don't know how you could help, then try to pick a way that feels kind of uncomfortable and scary to you and say, I'm just going to take at least one step in this direction, and maybe I'll find a new skill or a new talent and make life better for somebody along the way.
Today, we are joined by Paula Nybert, who leads the bereavement program with Our Hospice.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, why do you think it is that the holidays tend to make grief feel heavier?
So I think there's a combination of factors. I think the holidays make grief feel heavier because it's this very concentrated period of time that is traditionally defined by our memories, our roles, and traditions. And these things are, across the board, fundamentally altered by loss.
So you said a couple of key words that I'm hearing: tradition. And traditions can be, people, we want it, right? We want to keep the traditions. And, I have adult kids and they show up and they still want to do the the things, right?
Yes.
And yet it can feel really hard, and there's pressure to feel joyful. Would you agree? Do you experience that, or does the group you have maybe talk about that?
Yeah. So I think that the pressure and the expectations of the holidays can just complicate the grief process because it can add a layer of secondary suffering. So we're experiencing the primary loss, which is the grief of the person we've lost, and that can be deep and painful. We're missing someone. But then the secondary loss that we're feeling is the story that we tell ourselves about it. So we often will say, I shouldn't feel this way. I'm ruining it for everyone else if I'm crying. Might ask ourselves, like, what's wrong with me? And I think we feel this cultural pressure to make holiday fun and to make holiday cheerful. And so we have this expectation that we have a responsibility to perform into that. And that, and that's difficult.
I was talking to a team member yesterday. We had a holiday lunch, and I said, how are you doing this holiday in the space of, I know you lost your mom, but it's been a couple of years. And she said, I think this year is even harder than the first year. And I wonder about that. Is it because we have a little bit of fog in the first year and we're just trying to navigate?
You should be however you're feeling in the moment. One of the things that when I'm meeting individually with a person or in our group setting, I always start by saying that grief is universal and that everybody will experience grief in their lifetime. If you've loved someone and lost someone, you are 100% guaranteed to experience grief. But grief is also extremely unique because nobody will lose the same person that you did. You had a very unique relationship. So the easiest example of explaining this is if you have 3 siblings who have all lost the same parent, they've all lost the same person, but each of those relationships were unique and different. And so each of the siblings might be experiencing grief in a very different way. And all of those ways are valid.
This is Better Together, a podcast dedicated to making every moment count. Thank you for listening. Please like us and share this episode on your social media channels. If you have a question or you'd like to learn more about a specific topic, you can find us at www.ourhospice.org or call 812-314-8083. Until next time, remember that we are better together, making every single moment count.